You know, and so you're there, you're always going to be that point of contact, you're always going to be the person that they're going to go to for things, but you're not always doing everything for them. So really, when you're looking at the time commitment involved, it is a little more in the first 90 days, but, and I've learned this from experience, when you do put that time in and you do it right in those first 90 days and you train them well, they're not going to need you as much later on. They're not, you know, it's not going to be as much of a time commitment later on. And it's kind of a tendency too, I would encourage you to be careful with the first couple people that you sponsor. It's kind of natural to, you're just so excited and you just want to do everything for them. And so, but be careful kind of the precedents that you're set, because everything that you're going to do for those people, they're going to model that when they sponsor. And if you're doing everything for them, you know, all the time, you're constantly on them about everything, you know, then they're gonna turn around and they're gonna do that with the people that they sponsor, and that's not exactly what Premier wants for us. You know, sponsoring, they expect us to understand that it is somewhat of a time commitment, but it's not meant to be. We're not supposed to spend hours upon hours, you know, with the people that we sponsor. So, and we'll talk a little bit about that later, about more of the time commitment involved. But some of the things that would be examples of being actively involved with the people that you sponsor are, as I said, inviting them to trainings, trying to go with them to their first show. Sometimes that doesn't work out, but at least trying to make an effort. That's something, and that kind of depends on the jeweler. Some jewelers are fine. Some jewelers, I had a jeweler I just sponsored who really, really wanted me to go with her to her first show, and so, you know, I made that effort. Some jewelers are like, oh no, I'm great, I'm fine. So that kind of depends on the jeweler, but that's a nice suggestion. That would be a nice thing to do with your jewelers. Calling her every couple of days, you want to set that expectation with her that there's that open communication, that, you know, to be encouraging her to call. Emailing is okay for quick, you know, I send out emails about trainings for a quick response. If someone emails me with a quick question, I'll usually respond back with an email, but you don't want to set the precedence that you're going to communicate through email, because you can't build a relationship through email. There's no tone in emails, and sometimes if you're in a hurry and you know, write off a quick, you know, blah, blah, blah email, I've seen it happen. I learned my lesson personally. It's happened, you know, with the reverse with people and stuff. There's no tone in email, so be careful with emails. You can write a sentence that in your mind is totally normal, is totally like, oh, I was just telling her this, and it can be read completely differently. So, calling and building that relationship through, you know, through actual talking is really important with your jeweler. So calling her every couple of days and encouraging her to call you. We tell our new jewelers all the time, call me, call me, call me, but a lot of times she doesn't. And the biggest red flag when you start sponsoring is when they stop calling you. You know something's up. That's when you call her. So, but in the beginning, you want to be calling her quite a bit. One thing is at her training show, a good idea is to get out your calendar and write in your calendar all of her show dates. Tell her to call you after each show so you guys can go over what worked, what didn't work. But if she doesn't, then you know she had a show, and you can call her the next day. Hey, did you have a show last night? How did it go? You know, so that's a good idea to do that too. The most important thing that you do with your new jeweler is you teach her how to book. You give her a specific, solid booking activity, and that's what you tell her to do. You don't suggest it. You don't say, you know, maybe you should do this one. You just say, this is your booking activity. And it has to be some form of player pass. It can be whatever you do. You know, I personally do roller fold. It can just be regular player pass, deal or no deal, whatever it is. That's what you want to teach her for her booking activity. I also, okay, we'll talk about this later. Sorry, I'm getting kind of off track. Okay. Another thing is you don't want to give your new jewelers things. That's kind of another tendency, is to just give her things. You know, here's catalogs, here's this, here's that. You don't want to give her everything. You want to teach her to work for things. And you also, sponsoring is not supposed to be expensive for us. We're supposed to make money. So yeah, of course, we do have incentives. We do give gifts away and stuff, but just be careful. Be careful with the amount that you're doing that. That's not something that's expected of us, is to be giving things to our jewelers all the time. And then also being actively involved with the people is continuing to contact them. Once they're settled, they're out of your boat, I would say maybe once a month, you know, depending, maybe once a week, kind of depends on your relationship with her, but just that you're committed to having be actively involved with her. So that's what Premier would expect for you to be actively involved with your jewelers. That's some of the examples. And then they also encourage us and expect us to really be personally involved with our jewelers. So what that means is You're not always going to be best friends with everyone that you sponsor. You may not actually like everyone that you sponsor, okay? And that is okay. That is okay. You have to love. Don't tell Nikki. You have to love, just like your children, just like sometimes we don't like our children, but we love them. You love your jewelers. You don't have favorites. You know, I mean, you have to be very careful with that. But you know, Premier does expect us to build a relationship with them, and that is so huge in sponsoring, because the people, just like your business is going to have ups and downs, the people that you sponsor, their businesses are going to have ups and downs, and you want to have that relationship. You want them to be comfortable that they can come to you. A lot of times that's kind of what happens in the sponsor jeweler relationship, is that when they're not doing well, they're like apologetic about it, or they're like, I'm really sorry, I haven't had shows in a while, you know, whatever. And you as a sponsor, you're like, that's okay. You know, I mean, you want them to always feel comfortable that no matter what's going on, you on some level, like I said, you may not exactly be friends, but you have that relationship that you can, you know, you have that open relationship. So, you really want to get to know your jewelers on a personal level, you know. Go out for dinner with your jeweler and her spouse, you know her kids' names, like know things about your jeweler, so she knows that it's not just a sponsor relationship, that you're not just interested in what she's doing in her business, but you're interested in her and her life. The most important thing is to build a trust relationship with the people that you sponsor. That she always feels like she can come to you with anything. And a huge part of building that trust relationship is that it's so important that you never complain down. It's not that we're being fake. It's not that we're always acting like, you know, everything's coming up roses all the time. But it's not appropriate to ever complain down to your downline. As long as we're on this topic, it's really not appropriate to complain across to Premier Sisters. And I know we're friends, and we have a really tight group, which is wonderful. It's kind of unique. I don't want to say it's unique, but it's something that, bless you, that a lot of people. We have a great group. That's what I'm trying to say. We have a really great group, and we are really close. We know each other really well, and so we naturally have some closer friendships. But it's so important that even in those friendships, to not cross that line of complaining to each other, you know, to other Premier Sisters.
Husbands not to complain either to others.
That's a good point. I was like,
you're not supposed to say that. We're supposed to be happy.
Okay.
I remember he talked to Leticia, and he was like, don't tell her that.
Okay, that's a very good point. Yeah. And tell your husband too. That's a great point. Yeah, because you and your husband are partners in this.
Just to go back to that, it didn't do anything wrong. It actually helped me. Because I'm like, oh, so I'm not the only one who suffers a bit, you know?
Well, and there's a lot. I mean, the thing with your relationship with the people that you sponsor is that, as I said, it's not that we're always walking around like, oh, everything's great, you know? But in the moment, it's not appropriate to share that. If I'm going through a slump and I have no bookings, you guys aren't going to know it at the time. I'll use it later, you know, I'll bring it up later.
Testimony.
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you later, oh yeah, I've been, you know, and that's something that's important too, is you need to be able to relate. You need to be able to say, yeah, I've been there. You know, I mean, I've gone through some trials and now I can relate. I can say this is what I did to come out of it. But in the moment, I'm not going to tell you that. Yeah. I'm not going to get up in front of you at training and say, whatever, I don't know. I don't have any bookings either. So what do you want from me? You know, I mean, it's just not. And so, you know, obviously that's different because I get up in front of everyone at a training. But even just with your one jeweler that you have, you need to always have that relationship with her. And sometimes that's tough. And you know what? If you need to not answer your phone, that is okay. If you need to turn the phone off for the day, if you're just not feeling it, that is okay. Just don't answer the phone. Just call her back the next day. That's fine. Well, you're always happy. Okay. So building there. So being actively involved, being personally involved. A huge thing in Premier is that you are setting an example, and this starts with the very first person that you sponsor. And it's also important to mention that it's not only important that you're setting that example with your own jewelers, but you are setting that example with all the jewelers. And I think this starts with the very first person that you sponsor. That when you choose to sponsor, people are already looking up to you. If you sponsored one person, people are looking up to you. Wow, Kayla's sponsored. How'd you do that? You know, I mean, and you may not realize it. That may sound kind of funny too. And I don't think people are looking up to me, but they are. You know, and so it's important that you